So she was a very broken woman when she met Prince Charles, and that was, as we all know, a terribly unhappy marriage. But she then became glamorous. She suddenly discovered her fame because she was very beautiful and very charming. She says to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then invited to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, that was the crunch.
But they were globally, and they are globally known, but because of the way they behaved in the last 4 or 5 years, and as a price of betrayal, they are now, their reputation and their status and their fortunes are crumbling.
He, on the other hand, couldn't find an English woman who wanted to live with him. I mean, they all fled because of his depressions and paranoia. And here is a woman, Meghan, who was his safety net, and not living in the luxury she wanted and having to obey the royal commands. She stoked constantly that he should feel aggrieved and should feel unhappy. And I think that is in the end why he agreed that Meghan was not going to obey any rule. She had no intention of staying, and that she was going to be a huge problem. And that was reported obviously to the Queen and the rest. And they realized that this was a marriage which was not going to last in Britain. He had the applause he needed. The point about Meghan is she was looking for fame. She was looking for applause. She was looking for international recognition, which of course she failed to get because she had not enough talent, that she hoped her father would not come to the wedding. This is months before the wedding actually took place. And we know the whole story about the father having the heart attack and at the last minute bailing out.
Loving towards the afflicted, but he should never have done that. No, he should have betrayed his father. And I think as well, it is extraordinary that Chanduka had to persuade him to go after 5 years.
So she'd have to have an escape route. She'd have to find a sort of a Silicon Valley or somehow aging billionaire that would want to take her on. I don't think she'd walk into the wilderness. I can't imagine any man finding happiness with Meghan Markle. I mean, I think it'll be pretty difficult.
What looked to the world like a perfect royal fairy tale was, according to Tom Bower, something far more calculated and far less innocent. Meghan Markle has always described her wedding to Prince Harry as a dream come true, a once-in-a-lifetime love story that felt almost magical. But Bower tells a very different story.
She would never put herself above the monarchy, which of course was the downfall of Meghan in Britain, that she wanted to be number one. She didn't want to be part of a team. And they play the Diana card to suggest that when she is criticised, her fate will be the same as Diana.
Although the future Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, was initially welcomed into royal circles following the start of her relationship with Prince Harry.
Well, I think the Meghan Markle I know is on the good side, intelligent, resourceful, definitely resilient under fire, but on the other hand, intensely selfish, only self-opinionated, unable to see anything other than through her own lens, as she would say, appalling treatment of her father and her friends, old friends, a very conflicted personality. But worst of all for her is that she couldn't find huge fame and fortune on her own accomplishments. Her problem is she has very limited talent.
And the picture he paints is not soft, sweet, or romantic at all. In his version, what happened behind palace walls was not driven by pure emotion. It was driven by planning, ambition, and timing that he says was anything but accidental. And trust me.
You're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And she targeted, there's no doubt she targeted Harry and found someone who was a childhood friend of his who could introduce them. And then on the days before they met at their blind meeting in a club in London, she researched Harry very carefully.
This is only the beginning, because if Bower is right, every polished public moment starts to look very different once you strip away the glitter and look at what was happening underneath. Bower says Meghan's marriage to Harry was not some beautiful surprise written in the stars. He argues it was built step by step, with intention behind every move. According to him, Meghan had already been moving through richer, more influential social circles long before Harry ever entered the frame. She was not just hoping that success would somehow find her. She was chasing a bigger life, a more powerful circle, and a level of visibility that could take her much further than the path she was already on. In Bauer's telling, this was not a case of being in the right place at the right time. He suggests Meghan knew exactly what kind of world she wanted to enter, and she was not afraid to move toward it. That is why, when Prince Harry appeared, Bauer says the timing looked way too convenient to brush off. He points out that Meghan's first marriage to Trevor Engelson was already unraveling. The relationship was fading, cracks were showing, and the next chapter was beginning to come into focus. Then Harry came along, and from Bauer's point of view, that was the opening she had been waiting for. So in his version of events, Meghan made a sharp turn. She divorced Trevor, shifted her attention toward Harry, and once that door opened, she never looked back. Bauer makes it sound like she saw exactly what this relationship could do for her and moved fast before the moment could pass. To him, this was not random. It was a climb, and Harry was the biggest step up yet. That is what makes this next part hit even harder. Bauer argues that this royal life was not just something Meghan grew into after falling in love. He believes it was the kind of life she had wanted for a long time, and once it was finally within reach, she was not going to let anything block her path. That idea changes the whole tone of the story, because suddenly the romance starts looking less like destiny and more like strategy wrapped in a perfect public image. Then comes one of Bauer's most pointed claims, and this is where the story gets especially tense. In interviews over the years, Meghan often gave the impression that she had not known much about the royal family before meeting Harry. She played it cool, relaxed, almost like she was walking into that world with fresh eyes and no real preloaded obsession. It sounded casual, it sounded innocent, but Bauer completely rejects that version. He calls that image false and says Meghan was far more informed than she let on. According to him, before the first date even happened, Meghan had already gone into what many would call full research mode. Bauer suggests she did not just know who Harry was in a basic celebrity way. He says she studied him carefully, looked at what mattered to him.
This particular saga at Sandringham, which obviously was told by someone who was there, was a decisive moment. I mean, it's the moment where effectively she says to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then invited to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, that was the crunch, that she separated him from his hinterland. And of course, he does suffer now enormously. You know the whole story about the father having the heart attack and at the last minute bailing out. But she deliberately announced she did not want her father to lead her down the aisle in St. George's Chapel months before it happened. So that shows you exactly how she manipulated the father to, in the end, selling his pictures to a paparazzi and giving interviews. She manipulated the hostility
and worked out what kind of image would connect with him most deeply. That means his passions were not just background details, they became the map. Bauer says Meghan looked into the causes Harry cared about, like Africa, wildlife, humanitarian work, and charity. She learned the emotional language of his world. She figured out what moved him, what attracted him, what type of woman he would likely see as different from the rest. And then, according to Bauer, she positioned herself in a way that matched that image almost perfectly. That is why so many people find this account unsettling. Because Bauer is not just saying Meghan was interested in Harry, he is suggesting she understood how to appeal to him with precision. He believes she knew exactly which buttons to press, exactly what energy to bring, and exactly how to make herself unforgettable. In his version, it worked almost instantly. Harry reportedly said after just one date that he knew she was the one. That sounds romantic on the surface, sure, but Bauer pushes a much darker question. Was it really love at first sight, or had Harry been drawn into something far more carefully staged than he realized? And once you look at it through that lens, the next part becomes even harder to ignore. Bauer believes Meghan did not just win Harry's heart. He says she also slowly began pulling him away from the people who had been closest to him for years, not with one big dramatic move, but gradually, in a way that made the separation feel almost natural until it was already done, quietly. slowly, deliberately. That is how Bauer frames it, and it gives the whole story a much colder edge. He points to the 2017 shooting weekend at Sandringham as one of the early moments where cracks became visible. During that weekend, Meghan reportedly challenged Harry's friends over jokes and comments she found offensive. The issues touched on sexism, feminism, and transgender topics. Now, to be fair, standing up for your beliefs is not the issue by itself. Anyone can speak up when something crosses a line for them. But Bauer's focus is not only on that confrontation, it is on what followed after. Because according to his account, none of those friends from that weekend were invited to the dinner after the royal wedding. Think about how brutal that looks. These were not casual party contacts or people Harry barely remembered from years ago. These were long-time friends, men who had been part of his life through major chapters, people expected to remain close as he entered married life. Then suddenly, they were out, just like that. And Bauer suggests this was part of a bigger pattern, not an isolated moment. He argues that Meghan did not fit into Harry's old social circle, and instead of blending into it, she helped push it aside. That is a huge claim, because it paints the relationship as one that did not just change Harry's future. It changed his loyalties, his comfort zone, and the very people allowed to stay near him. For many watching from the outside, that is when the whole thing starts to feel less like a love story and more like a takeover. Even before Harry and Meghan's own wedding day arrived, Bauer says the signs were already showing up at other people's events. One of the most talked about examples was the Jamaica wedding of Harry's close friend Tom Inskip. Meghan reportedly complained about the food and the service, and Bauer says her attitude made people around her uncomfortable. It was not just a small off moment that came and went. In his telling, it left an impression, and not a good one. People who had expected Harry's future partner to slip into the group with warmth instead reportedly saw someone they viewed as demanding, sharp, and difficult to relax around. The atmosphere turned tense. The energy shifted, and according to Bauer, these moments began stacking up fast. The friends who were once expected to stand proudly beside Harry on his wedding day were no longer central. In their place came celebrities, glamorous names, and people Meghan had known for a very short time, people who barely knew Harry at all. That contrast says a lot, and Bauer clearly wants readers to notice it. In his account, those decisions did not come from Harry. He says Meghan was the one calling the shots. Meghan was the one shaping the guest list energy. Meghan was the one deciding which world would be welcomed in and which world would be shut out. If that is true, then the wedding was not just a union, it was a reset button on Harry's entire social life. And then there is the issue that got buried beneath all the sparkle, pageantry, and royal glamour of the wedding itself. Meghan's own family was almost entirely missing. That absence stood out then, and it still stands out now. Her father, Thomas Markle, was caught in the scandal over staged paparazzi photos before the wedding and then suffered a heart attack, which kept him from attending the ceremony. Her brother and sister were not invited either. In the end, the only family member there from Meghan's side was her mother, Doria, and reports said she arrived only 2 days before the wedding. For a ceremony presented to the world as modern, loving, and emotionally powerful, that family picture looked surprisingly fractured. Bauer treats that not as an unfortunate side issue, but as another warning sign. He suggests the public image was polished, but the private reality was already messy. That matters because royal weddings are not just personal events. They are global image machines, and every missing face raises questions. The tension reportedly got serious enough that King Charles himself stepped in behind the scenes. According to reports cited by Bauer, Charles privately urged Meghan to fly to the United States and repair things with her father before the drama exploded even more in public. He wanted the scandal cooled down. He wanted the embarrassment contained. He wanted the family image protected before the whole thing spun further out of control. But Meghan reportedly refused. She cited security and privacy concerns, and that answer did not go down well with senior royals. From their point of view, the wedding was supposed to send a message of warmth, dignity, unity, and fresh energy. Instead, the image was already cracking before the vows had even been said. That is what makes this part so striking. The fairy tale look was there for the cameras, but behind it, the stress was already boiling. And finally, Bauer points to one more issue that many inside royal circles reportedly found deeply unsettling. During the engagement and in the lead-up to the wedding, Harry and Meghan leaned heavily into visual and emotional comparisons between Meghan and Princess Diana. It showed up in the storytelling, the symbolism, the way moments were framed in public, and even details like the wedding veil. To the public, that may have looked touching or poetic, but inside royal circles, Bauer says it landed very differently. To many people in that world, invoking Diana's image so strongly did not feel respectful or natural. It felt loaded. It felt deliberate. It felt like a powerful legacy was being pulled into a new narrative for emotional impact and public advantage. And that is where the discomfort inside the royal family reportedly became impossible to ignore, because to them, those comparisons were not sweet tributes at all. They felt deeply disrespectful. Princess Diana did not win the public over in a single moment. She earned that love over years of work, sacrifice, and a kind of connection that people could feel was real. She showed up again and again, spoke to people others ignored, and carried herself in a way that made ordinary people feel seen. That is why so many people still talk about her with so much emotion. So when Meghan was barely inside palace life and already being framed in a similar light, it raised a lot of eyebrows fast. Tom Bauer does not hold back on that point at all. He says the Diana comparison was not just exaggerated, it was completely misplaced. In his view, trying to put Meghan in the Diana lane so early was never accurate, and he says Harry made a huge mistake by leaning into that parallel. Bauer's take is especially sharp because he argues Harry, despite being Diana's son, did not fully understand who his mother really was in the broader public sense, and that led him to project something onto Meghan that simply was not there. That is what makes this next part land even harder. We said number 7 would hit differently, and this is exactly why. According to Bauer, the palace was not in turmoil just because a royal wedding is stressful. Palace staff had handled giant royal events before. They knew how to deal with pressure, tradition, high expectations, and global attention. That was not new to them. What made this situation different, he says, was Meghan herself and the atmosphere that grew around her during the planning. Staff reportedly described feeling bombarded, overwhelmed, and constantly corrected. In Bauer's account, it was not just that Meghan had opinions. It was that every conversation could suddenly turn into another list of demands, changes, revisions, and complaints. That kind of environment wears people down fast, and according to the accounts he cites, some staff members got so fed up they simply walked away. Others reportedly tried to avoid direct contact because even a routine discussion could spiral into another tense exchange. That paints a rough picture, and Bauer clearly wants readers to sit with it. This was supposed to be one of the happiest periods leading up to a royal wedding, yet behind the scenes, the mood was reportedly tense and draining. Instead of excitement, there was anxiety. Instead of smooth teamwork, there was friction. And instead of people feeling energized by the historic moment, many reportedly felt pushed to the edge. That says a lot about how deep the frustration may have run inside palace walls. Even Princess Catherine was reportedly caught in that difficult atmosphere. During the bridesmaid dress discussions, Catherine is said to have offered suggestions, only to be shut down. According to Bauer, Meghan wanted things done her way and did not want compromise. No exceptions, no softening, no room for the advice of people who had spent years inside the royal system. For long-time staff and family members who knew how these events were usually handled, that reportedly made the whole process feel deeply uncomfortable. And when you put all of that together, the wedding starts to look very different from the polished public version people saw on television. On the outside, it was elegant, grand, emotional, and historic. But Bauer says behind all that sparkle was a work environment that had become painfully strained. That contrast between the glowing fairy tale image and the reported chaos backstage is exactly what makes this story so explosive. Then Bauer pushes the argument even further, and this is where it gets really intense. He says Meghan did not treat the wedding as just a love story sealed in front of the world. He claims she treated it like a launch, not just of a marriage, but of a brand. According to him, the cameras, the setting, the scale, the audience, all of it mattered because it gave her the biggest stage possible. In his telling, this was a global introduction crafted with image in mind every step of the way. Every detail, he suggests, was carefully managed. Every image mattered. Every shot mattered. Every appearance mattered. In Bauer's account, nothing was random because Meghan understood exactly how powerful that platform was. This was not just a ceremony, it was a worldwide spotlight, and he believes she knew how to use it. That is a bold claim, but it fits with the larger argument he keeps making throughout the book about image, control, and long-term ambition. The 2017 Vanity Fair cover story only adds fuel to that view. When the headline, "She's just wild about Harry," came out, many people thought it was flattering, glamorous, and perfect for a couple dominating headlines. But Bauer says Meghan was reportedly unhappy, not because the article was negative, but because it centered Harry more than it centered her. That detail is striking because most people in a new relationship would be thrilled with that kind of attention. Meghan, according to Bauer, wanted more than attention. She wanted authorship over the whole message. She reportedly wanted the story to focus on her work, her beliefs, her public identity, and the image she was trying to build. And honestly, that tells you a lot. It suggests that even when she was receiving major media attention, that still was not enough unless the framing was exactly right. Bauer says that need for control never really disappeared. In his view, it followed her through everything, from the engagement to the wedding to the way she positioned herself on the world stage afterward. Now we get to one of the biggest claims in the whole book, and this one is a real jaw-dropper. Tom Bauer says Meghan's goal was not just to marry a prince. He says she wanted the very top. He told Closer magazine directly, "Meghan wants everything. Kate has the status, the popularity, the crown." That is a brutal line, and it points straight to the monarchy's inner hierarchy. Because no matter how polished the wedding looked, one fact never changed. Harry was never first in line to the throne. That meant he was never realistically going to become king. So if Bauer is right, and Meghan's ambitions stretched that far, then she would have known very quickly that the crown itself was never going to be part of Harry's future. And if that road was closed, then the next move would have to be something else. Something outside the traditional royal path. Something more modern, more media-driven, and potentially more profitable. That is why Bauer wants people to look hard at that wedding guest list. Yes, it included royal figures and famous names, but it also included Hollywood insiders, producers, executives, and A-list celebrities. At the time, people read that as Meghan blending her old world with Harry's new one. But Bauer says those people were not just wedding guests. They were future contacts, future business links, future stepping stones to deals, platforms, and influence. In that reading, the wedding was doing more than celebrating a royal union. It was also building a network. Bauer suggests Meghan was already surrounding herself with exactly the kind of people who could help turn royal fame into media power later on. And when you think about the deals that came after, the streaming platforms, the publishing world, the non-stop branding, Bauer clearly wants readers to see a pattern. He believes the groundwork was being laid early, while the royal title was still shining at its brightest. That is why he describes the title almost like a golden ticket. In his telling, Meghan was still wearing the royal name while opening doors far beyond palace life. She was not just part of the institution. She was using the visibility that came with it to build something much bigger around herself. That is one of Bauer's most cutting points because it turns the wedding from a romantic milestone into the first big chapter of a long-term strategy. And then comes what may be the saddest part of all, because whatever anyone thinks of Meghan, Harry gave up almost everything familiar for this relationship. He stepped away from his family. He lost military roles and honours that clearly mattered to him. He left his country. He walked away from the structure, identity, and world he had known his entire life. That is not a small sacrifice. That is a complete break from everything that once defined him. Bauer's conclusion on all of this is harsh and unforgettable. He says Meghan's loyalty follows one question above all else: what is useful to her? That is his argument. He points to Trevor, saying she left when that relationship no longer matched her goals. He points to her father, saying she cut him off when he became a public problem. He points to friendships that reportedly faded once they no longer fit the new life she was building. And then Bauer takes it one step further, and this is where it gets especially cold. He argues that if someone wealthier, more powerful, and more connected ever came along, there is a real chance Harry could be left behind too. That is not a small accusation. It is huge. And in Bauer's telling, it makes Harry look less like the final destination and more like the most famous stepping stone of all. A man who gave up his whole world for love, while the person he chose may have been focused on something very different from the start. So there you have it, 10 hard truths from Tom Bauer about the royal wedding that the fairy tale version never told you. Some of these claims are shocking, some are controversial, and some are still argued over non-stop. But together they paint a version of events that is far darker than the glossy public image ever suggested. Now we want to hear from you. Which one of these claims hit you the hardest? Which part made you stop and think twice about the story the world was sold? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is just getting started. And if you found this video revealing, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Share this with someone who needs to hear the other side of the story, and turn on notifications so you do not miss what we uncover next.